Hi there, it's Llarold, and today I'm going to be talking about the Season 4 tier set bonuses for tanks that have now locked in as the voting has concluded. But before I do, I just want to talk briefly about patch 10.2.5, which is landing as of the time of recording this in a couple of hours. Depending on when you watch this, it may have already just landed a little bit ago. Okay, let's run through all the new things that are being added in the patch. Bel'ameth, it's a new zone west of the Emerald Dream Portal. It's the Emerald Awake. You can go there and pick up some Night Elf transmogs. It's pretty. That's about all there is to it. There's the Azerothian Archive. It's the new outdoor hourly public event. You do this in Trader's Rest, which is in the south end of the Azure span, basically about 500 yards east of Iskara. It gives battle pets, mounts, and so on. There's a new quest line to reclaim Gilneas with Gin Greymane. What do you do in this? How does it work? I assume it's just a quest line with a bunch of talking to you. Seems pretty cool. They didn't test it or demo it or let anybody data mine anything. So this is one big black box that I think a lot of people are excited to open up and look inside. I know I am. There are follower dungeons. These are just normal dungeons that you can do with NPCs instead of other players. It allows people to go at their own pace. They can let the NPCs lead the dungeon, or you can lead the NPCs around. I played around with this a bit. It was very weird having a fire mage do all the polls for me and tell me where to go, but kind of good for onboarding new players. There's some new hairstyles and skin colors for trolls and Draenei, some transmogs for warlock, tyrants, and darkglare demons. I don't play any of those, so I don't care, but cool for those who do. And finally, dragon riding is available worldwide. Now, this isn't dynamic flight. This isn't the patch 11.0 War Within pre-patch where you're going to be able to ride Lich King's Invincible as a dynamic flying mount. This is just dragon riding worldwide, but still a pretty huge step forward in making the game more modern, and I think that's pretty cool. Being able to dragon ride through Outland, Northrend, so on, very, very awesome. It is slightly reduced speed. Max speed is 85% of the Dragon Isles move speed, but it's still insanely fast because those zones were not made with dragon riding in mind, and it's still way faster than double the current flight speed, so pretty cool. That's pretty much all there is to it, though. That's not a huge patch, and that's fine. Now let's move on to the Season 4 tier set bonuses. Now, there were a couple of disclaimers with these tier set bonuses, just in this Wowhead post by Squishy here. One was that there were multiple votes. There was definitely some voter fraud happening. People could vote on every character rather than once per account. So there was definitely the potential for people to skew the vote. And then also there were some calls to make meme votes, some spite votes. Initially, people were voting for the Season 1 Augmentation Evoker tier set bonuses, which eventually were removed from the poll by Blizzard. Just like definitely some people messing with the vote, but I don't really think that had anything to do with the tank tier set bonuses. So let's look at the transmog. First off, the Season 3 transmog, one for Blood DK, or for DKs in general, I suppose. It's very spiky. I think that's about the only nice thing I have to say about it. I kind of like the transmog color palette for, I think this is the LFR one over here on the left side. Kind of looks cool. Again, very pointy. I think the normal PvP one here that's white and red looks pretty cool as well, but I would never wear this. Doesn't really look great on a Tauren. Now, as for the Blood tier set bonus, it is going to be the Season 2 tier set bonus, and I have to say I wasn't super thrilled about this initially. Like, going into the vote, I voted for Season 3 because it's better for Raid. I wish the Season 3 tier set bonus had worked with Blood Boil and had been able to spread that awesome Ashen Decay debuff onto multiple or more than 5 targets, but since it was capped at 5 targets due to Heartstrike being capped at 5 targets, I do actually think that the Season 2 tier set bonus is better. Even if it's not better numerically, training dummy, sim, craft, all of that, it's easier to use, kind of feels a little easier to play with, and just doing a dungeon like, I don't know, an hour ago, I was kind of thinking about this tier set bonus coming back and thinking like, yeah, it would be nice to have that. Like, maybe it's not as good, but it'll be a lot easier to use, and it is kind of nice to just get random Vamp Blood procs and get big strength procs all the time while you're tanking. Definitely better in Mythic Plus. And as I said in a previous video talking about these Season 4 tier set bonuses, Season 4 rating, it's all farm raid. None of that is competitive. Season 4 Mythic Plus, totally competitive. So it makes sense for all of these bonuses to be oriented towards Mythic Plus, and they are. Now let's look at Demon Hunter. I think that this Demon Hunter transmog is very clownish. They do appear to be showing it off on Night Elf and Blood Elf here. I don't think a single one of these looks good to me, but maybe it's because they're showing it off on male Night Elf and male Blood Elf, and they just have very goofy models. I do like this weird purple neck pillar on the Mythic transmog. I have to say that's very funny looking to me. Not cool at all, but funny looking. The Vengeance tier set bonus that won ultimately was Season 3. There was a surprising number of votes for the Season 2 tier set bonus. I think it is better, like, in terms of personal value, you know, your personal damage and damage reduction value. Season 2 was better. But that being said, I think there were some really good comments that kind of helped me come to this conclusion out of the previous video. Vengeance Demon Hunter is already like an unkillable god that does just infinite damage. It doesn't really need more of that. It doesn't need to lean harder into that to already, you know, to maintain its control as the dominant tank going forward. What it really needs is just to lean even harder on the defensive utility, you know, the availability of Sigil of Silence, the availability of Sigil of Chains, just all of the Sigil playstyle that you're getting through the Season 3 tier set bonus. So even though it may not be as good in terms of damage reduction and in terms of damage output, the Season 3 tier set bonus brings way more utility and winds up being way better in Mythic Plus than the Season 2 tier set bonus that is, like, again, kind of like the Blood DK situation, technically better in a training dummy simcraft sense. The utility just completely obliterates it. The ease of use, I think, of the Season 3 tier set bonus also is quite a lot better. That Season 2 tier set bonus was quite wonky to play with. I enjoyed it. I got pretty comfortable with it and I really liked it. But, you know, I think everybody's gotten fairly comfortable with the Season 3 play style, not having to change back, being able to just keep riding this high that Vengeance Demon Hunter is on. Barring any massive nerfs to it, I think there's a very real possibility that they're going to be remaining the dominant tank moving forward. I do think Blood DK is going to get a nice little bump. That was, you know, the tier set bonus from Season 2, I think, gives them a nice bump in terms of damage and damage reduction and just ease of play in Mythic Plus. So I think they'll see a rise in value, but it's not going to be, like, massive. Now let's move on to Druid. Druid's getting their, what is this, the Season 2 transmog? Yeah, the Season 2 transmog, surprisingly tight race with the Season 1. I think this one in the Mythic color looks really good. At least on my Zandalari Troll Druid, I think it looks really good. The PvP one also looks really good. It makes me wish I never wish I PvP'd in WoW, but I wish I had the transmog from it because that is a really, really nice looking color palette and actually pretty cool looking model, I have to say. The Bear Druid tier set, Runaway, absolute landslide. It's for Season 2. This is probably the biggest deficit of any single vote at all for all 36 specs. No question. The Season 2 tier set bonus coming back, giving Bear Druid increased damage for Mangle, Thrash, and Raise, and Maul, giving them increased rage generation, giving them healing based off of damage taken, which is amazing to have in Mythic Plus because your damage scaling, you know, your damage taken will infinitely scale depending on what key level you're doing. It's infinite scaling content. Your damage taken is going to be infinitely scaling as well. All of that combined with increased maximum health is just a perfect recipe for a truly unkillable tank. And given that Bear Druid also has massive utility in the form of, like, Incapacitating Roar, Typhoon, Ursul's Vortex, Dispel, De-Enrage, Innervate potentially, and then obviously the biggest one after the Wildfire. I think it's going to be Bear Druid rising back up the ranks. Now, there is one limiting factor, one genuinely significant nerf from their position of dominance in Season 2, and that's this right here. Blood Frenzy went from being 2 rage every time Thrash ticked with no target cap. So if you were taking like 20 targets, you could get 40 rage every time Thrash ticked, which is about every 2 seconds. So 20 rage per second. It now caps at 5. So it's capping at 15 rage per tick, so like 7.5 rage per second. That's kind of your upper limit. But I still think this is a real potential for Bear Druid to see a significant jump up, like quite a bit more so than Blood DK. So if Vengeance Demon Hunter gets any sort of nerfs at all to the underlying class, I don't think Bear Druid's really all that weak. I think their real weakness throughout Season 3 and throughout the current tier is that their current tier set bonus sucks. And now they're going back to the insane tier set bonus. I think there's a very real possibility that they're going to be a top tier tank again. All right, and now here we look at Monk. Monk has the Season 1 transmog that was the winner, and I do like this LFR color, the mint green or the tealish green. I think it looks pretty, well, Monk green, really. I think it looks great. I like the beads. I think that all looks cool. The only real issue I have with this is that they're showing it off on the human male model, and so it's just feet out, and all I can see is them toes. So I got to close this and move on. The Brewmaster tier set that won was, of course, the Season 3 one. It is substantially better than the Season 1 or Season 2 for Mythic Plus. And honestly, I don't even understand why anyone voted for the Season 1. I do feel like this is a spite vote. It's baffling that, I mean, the Season 1 tier set bonus at the time could honestly have no impact in Raid. Like, there were very realistically periods where you would go 15 seconds without casting Tiger Palm. Not so much in Mythic Plus. You're going to be casting Spinning Crane Kick at least once every 15 seconds, but 4% damage and damage reduction is nothing. It was actually like a Season 1 tier set bonus that just gives you damage and damage reduction and is very boring, but then it actually was kind of a difficult maintenance buff to maintain. Really just awful. The Season 2 tier set bonus was just straight damage. It gave you a little bit of extra dodge chance. That was actually pretty useful in Raid, but in Mythic Plus, not very impactful and not a huge damage increase either. Like, Season 3's better on all fronts for Mythic Plus. It gives you all of what you crave as a monk. It gives you damage, it gives you healing, it gives you damage reduction in the form of this Celestial Brew extra stagger shield. I think all of that's great. I wish that the damage that it provided was larger so that it would be good in Raid, even if it were a little bit more stilted toward having some more single target implications, right? If it were like higher single target damage and then less for AoE, that could balance out and still be good in Mythic Plus without being like horribly weak in Raid. That hasn't really been the case, and so that hasn't been great for Monk in this final tier of the expansion. But for Mythic Plus, it's pretty good. The only real problem here is that Monk is still, like, last I checked, last place in terms of popularity among tanks. So even though this is a good tier set bonus and I'm glad to have it going forward, it hasn't done anything to move the needle in terms of making Monk popular at all. Fun for the handful of us who enjoy it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now let's move on to Paladin. Paladin Season 2 Transmog has won. There are a lot of good recolors of this, and it is a great looking set. I like the Mythic set a lot, huge fan. I actually think the PvP set with the green glow looks amazing. The white glow elite PvP set's kind of eye-catching as well. I think the normal set looks pretty great. All of these look really good. Blizzard absolutely knocked it out of the park on this one. Now this is the one surprising vote for me. The Season 1 tier set bonus won, and the Season 1 tier set bonus, I understand why it has won. It's theoretically good in Mythic Plus. It will need to be tuned up by Blizzard, and that is my concern with it. Like, if we strip all the numbers away, we just think about this in terms of design, what the Season 1 tier set bonus gives you is versatility for you and an ally and parry chance. Now, yes, you have to do some stuff. You have to like cast Avenger's Shield. You have to cast Hammer of the Righteous or Blessed Hammer, but you do those. That's like saying you have to, I don't know, breathe to have air in your lungs. You do that. These bonuses are basically just the equivalent of passive stats. I mean, they really could just be 10% versatility as the 2-piece, 6% parry chance as the 4-piece, and that's probably what they're going to wind up being, and that's kind of a bummer to me. The only real value I see here that's like interesting or good is that it gives some versatility to an ally. That is useful. Is it as good as the Season 2 tier set bonus that gave like basically Ignite on top of your Avenger Shield and your Judgment crits, and gave you healing for all of that, and gave you, you know, based on your crit chance, a 5 to 10% chance for your Judgments to give you a Grand Crusader proc? For me, not really. I thought that the Season 2 bonus was quite a bit more interesting, but a little less consistent. It didn't feel like it was doing as much for people. People feel like the versatility going on to an ally is a big deal. And I guess ultimately the difference between the season 1 and season 2 tier set bonuses isn't really all that large. The real impact is that sometimes you would get some more Grand Crusader procs with season 2 that you don't get with season 1 or season 3. Season 3 is the one that's actually complicated and has a lot going on, and I think that's probably what split a lot of the vote between season 2 and season 3 is season 3 kind of has some interesting stuff happening. The problem is that it's tied to standing and consecration, which is annoying. The season 1 bonus, it's basically just free real estate, and I'm not going to be too upset about going back to that, to be honest, but it is a little disheartening to go back to a season 1 tier set bonus that is functionally just passive stats. The only way I'll really feel good about this is if the versatility on this 2 set bonus actually gets tuned up to be a substantial amount, like 15 or 20%, then I'll feel great. If that doesn't happen, it winds up being 6 or 8%. I'm going to be kind of mad, and I think Pally's going to take quite a bit of a dip compared to some of the other tanks. But I could be wrong on this. Pally, just the base class, if their tier set bonus was nothing at all, they'd still be good in Mythic Plus because of all of the utility they bring, the interrupts, the healing to the group, the spell wards, the sacrifice, all of that. They don't need a tier set bonus to be good, but it would be nice if the tier set bonuses that they got this expansion were a little bit more interesting and less annoying. And finally, we have Warrior, which that's Warlock. That's pretty cool looking. And Warrior has a very cool looking set of color palettes on this transmog, I think. This is the season 2 transmog, if I remember correctly. Yup, one in a landslide. Cool looking. I really like the heroic color palette. Not a huge fan of this actual shape of the armor on a human male. I think it looks better on some of the other, I don't know, body types though. In any case, let's look at the Prot Warrior tier set, and kind of surprisingly, the Season 1 tier set got a lot of votes. When that Season 1 tier set, the 2-piece was just you use Revenge, you get damage and damage reduction, and then the 4-piece was you get a tiny trickle of all of your damage feeding into your Ignore Pain. Now, I think people were hoping, I think it's one of two things. It's either that people were just thinking that Prot Warrior was strong in Season 1, which it was for the first half because the class was overtuned, and kind of saying, oh, well, it was good then, maybe the tier set was part of the reason why. And it, I mean, I guess it was a very small part, but it wasn't a large part at all. Or they were hoping that that tier set would get returned to, instead of being 5% leech into your Ignore Pain, back to 20%. And if it were 20% leech, you know, you take a class like Prot Warrior that has some weaknesses in terms of utility and in terms of consistent defenses against unblockable damage, and you give that class 20% leech that feeds into a shield, so it's not like a problem of overhealing, and that becomes an unkillable god again. But that's not going to happen because it's going to be the Season 3 tier set bonus. It has quite a bit more interaction with it. It has the damage reduction from consuming bleeds. It has obviously the damage from consuming bleeds. It has the cooldown reduction on Thunderous Roar and the Thunderclap resetting also from resetting those bleeds. So, or consuming those blades. I like this tier set a lot. I think it's really fun, and I think it's something that I would like to see turned into a baseline talent going into the War Within. That's, again, something I'm going to be campaigning for. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. Maybe it won't. And ultimately, I'm very excited about playing Prot Warrior, the same play style going on through the rest of the expansion, because I've really enjoyed this bonus and this play style that Season 3 tier set has created. However, it's not popular in Raid. It's not popular in Mythic Plus. I think that the underlying class really needs to be buffed up if that's going to change at all. And I just don't see Prot Warrior really making any sort of jump up. So with all of that being said, looking at the classes, I think Prot Warrior is going to be treading water down near the bottom. I think Brewmaster Monk is going to be treading water down near the bottom. I think Prot Pally could possibly lose a tiny bit of its advantage over, you know, those two classes, Druid and DK, but I think it's probably not going to happen unless this bonus, the tier set bonuses, just don't get tuned up at all, which is possible. And beyond that, I would say, you know, I think that Bear Druid is really the winner in all of this. I think Bear Druid's going to see a nice rise up. I think Demon Hunter's going to stay up top. Paladin's going to stay up top. And then DK, Warrior, and Monk are going to be kind of a good step below. Alright, I think that pretty much covers it on the tier set bonuses. Obviously, I'm very excited for Season 4. I'm hoping that we don't just get a return of all of the Dragonflight dungeons, but, you know, they might be more fun in a second time around if they get another tuning pass. And getting to do them with some of the newer tier set bonuses might make it kind of a fun change of pace anyways. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.